Hello, welcome back to another episode of Addiction and Relationships. And we're talking all about recovery today. I have my husband Doug here with us today. Hello, Doug.
Hello.
Hello. We are so happy to be with you today because I believe truly, now I say this all the time, but I think like, oh man, what we're going to talk about today is so important.
It's the most
It's the
important.
most important. But the truth is that we don't really share unless we believe we have something shareable to share that's really important or life changing in some way. We're not people are like, hey, oh, I take a picture of our food. Let's talk about, the weather
Oh,
today. Uh,
yeah, we don't do that.
so this is so what we're going to be talking about today are things that we've discovered along the way where traditional treatment gets it wrong. And now, listen,
It's just our opinion.
it's our opinion based upon lots of research and
Mhm.
decades of experience. But I want to say, if what you've done, right, if you're a person or a family member and you've gone into treatment and it has
Well,
worked
yeah,
for you, awesome.
yeah.
Right?
And how many times did we experience? So we have almost a decade of experience working in multiple treatment centers. We had three centers in under one umbrella. How many times did we meet people who'd been through treatment multiple times?
Oh my gosh, I think when we used to do it, now we have it virtual, but when we used to do it in person, the first day, we would have an audience, 100 people in the program or whatever, and I'd say, okay, raise your hand if this is your first time your loved one's been in treatment, and a lot of hands would go up around the room, right? And then I'd
Oh, a,
say,
a lot, meaning a small percentage. It was a reasonably small
okay,
percentage.
okay, yeah. So hands would go up,
Yeah.
and I would say, how many this is your loved one's second time in treatment, not here, but just anywhere, right? Second time, hands would go up. Third time. Now, by the time I started getting to like 10 times or 15 times, the looks on the faces of the first timers
Oh my gosh.
around the space
You can
were
just see
like,
them go.
but it doesn't have to be that way.
Nope.
That's the good news. Like we used to say all the time, hey, treatment's like a combination lock. It's one time you go in and you get one number on the lock, and the next time you go in and you get two numbers on the lock, and then the next time you go in, and so it's all treatment is good, right? All roads can lead to Rome to recovery. But since we've been doing this so long, and especially in this line of work for the last 2 decades, dealing with addiction, relationships, families, we really believe that we have the answers to why those other things haven't worked. Having successfully treated thousands of addicts and alcoholics,
And their
many of
families.
whom and their families, many of whom are still sober.
Hmm.
10 years, 12 years later, 15 years later. Um,
And we
and
know
they,
this because they stay in touch with us and tell us all the things we learn, and they'll share some of the things that
right.
they've applied, that they still apply, that are getting them the results that they want, which is a life worth being sober for.
That's right. And so, what we're going to share with you are things that work, that we've seen our students and clients implement and has really helped them to maintain long-term sobriety and kind of painlessly.
Yeah, and I would say these are distinctions.
These are distinctions.
Yes.
And so, okay, we're going to dive into it. Before we do, I want to share with you how we came up with these concepts. And just so you have a little bit of a background as to why we know these things or where these things originated. So Doug and I met and married because we're personal development junkies.
No.
All right. I had prayed that I would meet somebody that was like, we could do seminars together and conquer the world together and make such a difference, and wrote that all in my journal, and about exactly the type of person I wanted.
As did I.
And we created this beautiful relationship. Not We didn't come by it easily though. We both had struggles along the way, obviously. But at the time that I met you, one of the things that really attracted me to you is that at the time you were working with Tony Robbins,
Hmm.
and you were traveling around the country, participating in filling up the Unleash the Power Within events and getting people excited and motivated to change their lives. And we traveled around the country with Tony Robbins
4 years.
for 4 years. We lived on the road. We'd go to different locations and set up shop and move, and then fill that UPW and then go to the next one. And it was really an amazing experience. And just being immersed in that community was amazing. And I, at the time, was still in personal development, but still kind of self-destructive. Not kind of, I was very self-destructive. I was like binge drinking and things like that. And it was not okay. But I started to apply the principles of what I was learning in the personal development world to sobriety, because I had gone into like tried AA and tried some other things, but honestly, I none of that resonated with me. And I was so steeped in personal development that I knew would studied a lot of Ernest Holmes, Science of the Mind, a lot of the greats, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, all this personal development stuff. And I said, well, why can't this work for sobriety? Because I had been told my whole life that, well, there's only one way to recover. You've got to do this or that, So I started applying it to my own life and got sober. And then about a year into my sobriety, Doug said, hey, I have this opportunity. And I said, I love when he says he has opportunities, because I never know what we're going to be doing or
Who
where we're going
knows?
to be going. It's like, oh
Life's
my
an
God,
adventure.
life's an adventure. And he said, an owner of treatment center. We were living, I think, in Chicago at the time, or Florida. I'm not sure. We were on the
We were in
road.
Chicago.
And Doug said, hey, there's this guy that owns a treatment center. He owns multiple treatment centers. And
No, at the time it was the one we grew with.
oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. We helped him grow to more.
Mhm.
Yeah. So he said, hey, he was a big Tony Robbins fan. And he said, why don't he and Doug made friends.
Yeah.
They just became buddies, which you do with people.
Yeah, and the way that happened was we needed a place to hold events while we were on the road, and so we did that while we were in Florida, and met him, and then we became friends after speaking at the event,
Right, that's
and
right.
using his space to hold events.
That's right.
And then we were in Chicago, and then he asked us, he's like, what's your plan? What are you going to do? And like, what are you asking? He goes, well, this is what's missing from our center, is that personal development. He's like, I'm doing some of it, but like you guys just come in and fly everything that you're doing from the personal development, professional development
Taking it
aspect,
into business world and
yeah,
relationship world, and all of that,
and bring it
treatment.
into our center. And that's what helped us grow from 1 to 3 centers, is by creating such a dynamic of new thinking, of new approaches that were effective. It wasn't like novel just to be like, hey, let's try something different.
Oh, and by the way, there was a lot of resistance.
Yes.
We had a ton of resistance, because as you can imagine, in the recovery community, there are these ideas and opinions about like one road to Rome, and this is the way that you do it. And science has really shown differently, especially in some of the things that we're going to talk about today, where this old thought, this old way of doing things, the traditional way of helping people recover, inadvertently actually programs people to stay sick or stay stuck.
With positive intentions.
With positive intentions. So Doug, so that is also a master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming. And a lot of these concepts and ideas have come out of, and all that is, what is NLP, neurolinguistic programming, is just a study of all the greats. Virginia Satir, Adlerian psychology, Jungian psychology, Erickson, Ericksonian hypnosis, just a study of all the great Gestalt therapy, all the great therapeutics, and then bringing them into one arena and pulling, like, picture like you're a warrior or you're a superhero, and you have all these, like, oh, here's Adlerian psychology, oh, here's a little bit of
it's essentially modeling what works.
Right, it's modeling what works. And so, but people were skeptical because we weren't therapists at the time. We were life coaches, right? We were coaches, and they're like, who the hell are these coaches going to come in here and talk about,
They became Southern all of a sudden.
No, I know. I don't know why I go back to my roots. Who the hell do you think you are? Who the hell do you think you are? Okay. So one of the things that we noticed right away, okay, when we came into the treatment center, and we're like, all right, they gave us free reign. They were like, Doug and Heidi, you're going to take over like basically 80% of the programming. And we did. We had thousands of clients, about 100 a week, come in, 100 a month come in through the doors, over like,
because we did all levels of care. We would detox to
everything. And so one of the first concepts that Doug and I really had to change the thought process from the students and the clients is this idea and notion of being powerless. So we want to talk a little bit about, you know, one of the things that people need to learn, people are talking about in working the steps and working the program is surrender, right? You have to surrender.
Which is different than powerless.
And the truth is, though, if you're going to fight addiction, if you're going to win the battle of addiction, you've got to join the fight. And surrendering is not on the menu. Okay.
Well,
but surrendering to the fact that you have an issue.
Yes.
Okay. So powerlessness.
Well, I mean, just think about that for a moment. Yeah.
Powerless. What happens?
If someone says, I'm powerless, what does that say? Like, what are you actually articulating? Now, one might argue that the idea of that powerlessness is that, that's where I'm surrendering. I'm letting go to let God. It's very different. Powerless is just basically throwing your hands up and just going, oh, what am I going to do? I'm making no decision here. I'm powerless.
Also, there was this big idea in the treatment center that you're powerless over your addiction, period. That you could be just living your best life, and then all of a sudden the beer fairy or the pill fairy is going to fly in and pour alcohol down your throat in the middle of the night, or have you relapse, and I'm powerless against it. And that attitude creates more relapses, more people suffering. So basically, your mind will go, your body will go where your mind and your words tell it to go. It is done to you as you believe, right? There is life and death in the power of the tongue. We know these things conceptually, like biblically and historically, and all the great master teachers have taught us, like if your words are your wand, if you want to speak into existence, we also have a secret law of manifestation, cause, the law of attraction, all of these different things, but then we're not using these tools that are real tools inside the fight of your life.
And I think oftentimes I think things get conflated into where you do have power, because if you're focusing on being powerless, you're not recognizing where in fact you do have the power. So the idea here is to access our power, our God-given power, our connected to our higher power.
And our power to choose.
Right. And the power to choose. And it's that awareness, right? So it's the awareness of taking back your power, I suppose, when you're having a conversation, that internal dialogue of, oh, you're powerless, right? That's the programming that has happened, what Heidi was sharing, which leads you down to giving up, because like, well, why bother? I'm powerless.
Yeah. I'm at the mercy of my disease, right? And it's not a disease the way that cancer disease is a disease, okay? Like if you had cancer and you did, first of all, you could have cancer and not have smoked, eaten poorly, done anything at all, right? You could get cancer and it'll just show up. Addiction doesn't work that way. Addiction is a training program. Addiction happens even if you have a predisposition or no predispositions to it. Addiction is an equal opportunity destroyer, and it doesn't need what it needs is permission to enter. Okay, meaning it's a habit. It's a habit that becomes a pattern. And so let's say like diabetes, you might have a predisposition to diabetes. If you get diabetes, if you do the right things you need to do for your diabetes, that diabetes will likely go into remission, right? If you're managing everything you need to manage, the same is true for addiction. If you are managing your addiction and the underlying
managing yourself,
addiction not
is the byproduct.
Addiction's a byproduct. You will then keep it in remission for the rest of your life. It's not something that just happens. So I guess now's a really good time to say there are a lot of myths about addiction. There's a lot of misunderstanding about how it happens even and what it is. And so we have, just as a little side note, let's just take a little pause and let you know that this episode of the podcast and the YouTube is brought to you by us. And what we're doing, what we've decided to do is to start holding our weekend family warrior
Family
family empowerment warrior weekend live. And when is it?
October. Well, you know what?
We know when it
Let's
is.
not lock down the date here. No, we do. I just want this to be evergreen.
Great.
Yeah.
So here's where you can go. If you're watching this video and you're like, man, this sounds like a good lot of good information. I haven't heard this information before. I'd like to have this information. There's more where that came from. Trust us, there's a lot of information that you've been missing that could be the key to unlocking freedom from addiction for good. And so we want you to go to Family Empowerment Warrior.com. Family Empowerment Warrior.com. Okay, I'm going to put the link inside of this description, familyempowermentwarrior.com, and sign up to come be with us for 3 days. It's a 3-day event. We're going to sit with you. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to be interacting with you live. It will be over a Zoom. It's over a Zoom situation. You can be anonymous at first if you choose to. If you don't quite know, you can leave your camera off and just absorb the information, or you can come prepared and participate. There's even a VIP experience if you want to have more attention and time with us. But, the thing is that there's information that you need to have that's at your fingertips right here that we've decided we are going to consistently be doing this family empowerment weekend forever. Forever?
As long as it's needed.
As long as people are showing up to take the courses. Wow. Okay. So the first thing is powerlessness. Another thing is that we struggled with is, every day you'd have them do introductions, right? You'd have the clients sit down, and the new clients will come in and introduce themselves. And what would happen?
Well, there's some training that occurs oftentimes that usually when people finally make the decision to go to treatment, it's been a long road, and they've probably been to a program of sorts. So they've probably been to AA or something like that. And one of the habits that the AA program has people share is, hi, I'm Doug and I'm an alcoholic, or I'm an addict, I'm what have you. And the challenge there, well, why don't you think about it for a moment? What might be a challenge if you were to identify as an alcoholic or an addict, that I am an alcoholic, I am an addict?
Well, and just bear in mind that alcoholism is something you have, not who you are. Would that be the same as if I said I'm cancer? I'm diabetes.
Right. Well, so
then
we would take it a step further, and then we would run this exercise. We'd say, all right, what does an addict do? And we get feedback like, well, addicts use, addicts lie, addicts cheat, addicts steal, addicts are, bad people, addicts are, and all these terrible identities or behaviors around the identity of alcoholic. So then I would say, okay, well, then try this on. Hi, I'm Doug. I'm a liar. I'm a cheat. I steal. I do all these terrible things. You want to hang out? And of course, everyone's like, well, no. So then imagine if you were walking around believing your identity was someone who lies, cheats, steals, manipulates, uses drugs, all of that. When you're not doing that, you're incongruent and you're feeling like something's not right.
The brain's biggest desire in life is to be right.
Yeah. Well,
it doesn't care what it's right about. It wants to be congruent.
Right. The most most powerful part is the brain must be congruent with the way it identifies itself. It will live into that identity.
And that is straight up science of the mind.
Yeah.
Straight up science of the mind.
So so then what we would do is say, okay, you may have a condition that we're working on, and who else are you? Who else are you? You're a mother, you're a father, you're a teacher, you're a husband, you're a wife, you're a son, you're a daughter, you're so many other things. And we lose track of those because once we say I'm an addict, then I'm a miserable father. I'm a terrible wife. I'm like the worst kid ever. And it makes it.
The point is that when is it useful to actually identify? When you go to get the diagnostic. Okay. The only time it's useful to identify as something is when you're getting identified as that thing so that you can fight the thing you're getting identified as.
Well, and it's
Okay.
not your identity still. It's a
No, it's a
behavior, it's a
condition.
condition, it's not an
It's
identity.
a habit.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we don't want to identify over and over and over again. Okay. So you might identify one time, right? If I had cancer, I'd go to the doctor and I'd be like, Doc, and he'd be like, I have cancer. You
You
would
wouldn't
hear
say I am
no,
cancer.
but let me tell you what I would do. You'd come in the room, you could practice being sad. Let's see how devastated you'd be. Would you be inconsolable for 10 minutes?
Be five.
Okay. If I say, Doug, I have cancer. Okay. Ellie comes in, Ellie, I have cancer.
Right. Well,
That would be the last, you don't have to practice.
oh,
That would be the last time you would hear me utter, I have cancer. Because I know that according to the science of the mind, according to the way the mind works, and according to the way this whole universe is wired and the laws of the universe, that what I need to do is speak health and wellness continually. Now, by the
well,
way,
and do.
this isn't magic. Okay. I'm just going to wave my magic wand and I'm going to be like, oh, speak health and wellness. It means that if I start with my language, the body will follow. Okay. So if I'm training myself and say, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm well, I will be compelled then to be what Doug said, congruent and treat my body as if it is in alignment with that belief system. Okay. Now, this might sound complex and it takes practice. We were watching
Simple, not easy.
Doctor Strange last night. Okay. And Doctor Strange, Doug is my little Doctor Strange, not my little, my big Doctor Strange. Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I mean, yes. And now I gave it away. So anyway, we were watching Doctor Strange last night, and he goes, Doctor Strange is like fiddling around with his little fingers, trying to make the magic. He's going to do it. And he goes, well, how do I get to his master from where you are to from where I am to where you are? How do I get there? Because she was just teaching the science of the mind. She was teaching how to use your mind or change reality and do what you need to do. And she was like, well, you're a doctor. How'd you become a doctor? And he was like, hours and hours of skills and practice. And that is the exact same thing. There is skills and practice. There is a retraining, a reprogramming of the mind that needs to happen if an addict or an alcoholic is going to leave that identity behind. Leave that identity behind and live into a new empowering identity. But that's a steps, that's processes. And that's what Doug and I want to guide you to.
And that's something that is the unfortunate truth is that you programmed yourself into the situation you're in.
You got to program yourself out of it.
It takes an effort, right? It takes discipline and effort, and we make it fun. I mean, that's the thing is it's one of the things that we talk about and we teach is in order to, it's like going to the gym. Like we do certain things. Like there's so many different ways you go to the gym, but the basics are you got to move, you got to go in and stretch your body, push your body, get uncomfortable, and then what do we do to make it more pleasurable so we keep going back? And that's the key to creating this amazing life is finding ways to enjoy the things that are going to be a little bit of work. We have unfortunately gotten to a place where we're expecting instant results.
Well, immediate gratification is part of that problem, right?
Yeah.
The last thing that really keeps people stuck, I believe, one of the worst things that we could do is well, the premise is the psychology behind it is that your brain doesn't know the difference between past, present, or future. If you hook athletes up to a machine and you have them run a marathon, the same parts of their brain trigger on as if they're rehearsing and as if they're actually doing it. Research has shown that. That is not new science. Okay. So we know that where I go in the mind, the body will follow. I can go in the body where I first go in the mind. Okay. We know this to be true. Everything happens in here. But then we go into these groups or Alcoholics Anonymous or one of our therapy offices, and we're like, what's going on there? And we want to tell stories over and over and over again about how it was when we were using. And now some of these stories aren't just horror stories. Some of these stories are when clients would want to come around and talk about the good old days, right? And they want to romanticize what had happened and they'll start talking. And I said, the only things you're not allowed to talk about when we're working with you are drugs or alcohol.
No.
And students would be like, what? And clients would be like, what?
That's
Yeah.
what I'm here to work on.
We're not allowed to talk about are drugs and alcohol, because drugs and alcohol are not the problem. They're the solution to whatever else is going on. So when you're telling stories of like good old days, oh yeah, remember when I did that? We had a 6-pack and we went down the river. Your body's like, yeah, you're refiring that wiring again, that's saying, oh, this is the way to happiness.
You're actually deepening the neurological connection to the experience that you're looking to avoid.
That's right.
And there's also, here's an interesting bit of science, is when does someone get the most high? Before they use. Before they use is actually when most of the dopamine starts firing and so forth. So what happens is just the idea of it stimulates enough of the experience that it actually causes your brain to continue to go down that path, because every time I even think about it, I'm starting to get the rush, starting to feel good. So what we're talking about is how to create new neural pathways that allow you to expand your life of joy, happiness, fulfillment, and beyond. Because again, if drugs and alcohol aren't the problem, they've been the solution. And you take the drugs and alcohol away,
you're left with a big problem.
Yeah.
More than one. Many of us are medicating, and myself included. Let me drive this home. Here are the 3 points that we've talked about so far, and let me give you a story that you're going to want to listen to, because it's going to take into account everything we just taught you, these 3 things, and I'm going to show you how I did it first to actually get sober and become alcohol free for the last 15, 16 years. Okay. This is how I started out in my journey. Before I tell you that story, I want to remind you, we have a commitment to you to take you through 3 days of life-changing information for you and for your entire family. Nobody else is talking about addiction this way. Nobody else is using the tools this way. And I want to tell you why. What's the sad part is a lot of people stay away from working in addiction. A lot of people in the personal development industry are like, I don't know about being in there. And there's a lot of stigma around it, a lot of stories around it. But hey, everybody's addicted to something. Okay. So we're not just talking about drug addiction or alcohol addiction. We're talking about
we've got to mention that. Yeah.
sex addiction.
The internet is in the DSM-5 now as a treatable addiction.
All of it.
By the way, the treatment center we were at was dual diagnosis and behavioral. So it wasn't just exclusively.
No, we
had gambling, eating disorders, gaming. We had gamers in there.
Gaming. So, I don't really know if this is, me. Well, do you have a habit? Or do you know somebody who has a habit that is costing them psychologically, emotionally, financially, physically, spiritually, and the price they're paying is higher than the payoff? Well, they need to know. They need to come to the family weekend. So you can come to the weekend with us live, virtually. We're so excited. We can't wait to spend 3 days with you. Go to familyempowermentwarrior.com and become one of the few, just like us, who get this information so that you can start to live an alcohol-free, substance-free, habit-free, destructive habit-free lifestyle. Okay. So when I first decided that I wanted to get sober, by the way, I had tried many times. I'd gone to, I tried all the stages, like, oh, let me just not pregame. Let me just drink wine instead of, Jägermeister, all the different bargaining and things that we do. And one morning I woke up and I said to my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, I have had my last drink. And drinking wasn't my only vice. Okay. But at the time, codependency was my main problem. I didn't know that. Right. But alcohol, I said, I'm not going to look back. And he said, fine, tell me what I can do to support you. So the first thing that I had to do was decide I was powerful. So I learned enough self-development at this point. Doug and I had been teaching it and being steeped in it and living inside of it for all of these years, that I knew that I had to get myself into a state that said, I can do this, that I've got this, that I am doing this, that it is done. In fact, when I quit drinking and smoking, The very first thing I did was, when we talk about a disempowering identity, is I did not say I was an alcoholic, and I didn't say I was a smoker. In fact, I remember one time I was at an event and somebody knew that I just quit smoking. And she came into me, it was a life mastery. We went to another Tony Robbins event. She goes, "Oh my gosh, this must be so difficult for you. How are you doing?" She was like, "Okay, don't smoke, don't smoke." And I looked at her and I said, "Why would I smoke? I'm a non-smoker." I identified as a non-smoker, the same way I identified as a non-drinker. Drinkers, alcoholics struggle to stay sober. Non-drinkers don't drink. Okay. So I identified an empowering identity. I'm a non-drinker. Now, of course, there's lots more identities, but that was it. And then I decided I needed to, instead of tell stories of old school, what happened and how bad it was, that I would create a new vision for myself. And I would go to the gym, get myself into a peak state, and I would go on to a treadmill and get into my mode, listening to Eminem, not afraid. And I'd get on my treadmill and I put it on an incline and I would march and I would envision myself speaking to 5,000 people about how to get and stay sober. I had no business. I was sober for 4 minutes. I had no business thinking about these things in my mind, but I knew that I had to start a new program. I had to get a new path. I had to create a new reality for myself to walk into and to live into. Was it easy? No, but these are the basics. You've got to have the basics down. The science of the mind, the understanding of how this thing works and how it is just a machine and it will do anything you want it to do, but you have to know the manual. You have to have an owner's manual to your mind.
Well, and if you think of what you just shared, it's imagine like you're in the dark and you're lighting the path. Well, you're lighting the path with your vision. So you could either light the path of reliving the past, which was to keep you stuck.
And I couldn't see myself sitting in meetings for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
No offense, but I just couldn't see myself struggling to stay. So if that was going to be my life, Doug, I would have rather kept drinking.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's and that's what we're kind of getting to as well, is there are people who, and look, by the way, we're not knocking a program. If it works for you,
great.
Awesome. If you're feeling like it kind of works, but it's still painful, I'm still feeling like
yeah, it works.
Well, I remember one day this girl came to do an H&I, come in and share from the program, and she sits down and well, I lost my job.
It's you Southern now too?
Yeah.
Why don't we all turn to West Virginia?
My parents don't talk to me. I'm probably going to get kicked out of my halfway.
I remember that girl.
But at least I didn't drink.
No, she actually said, "Today I can shower every day. Today I wake up."
A different person.
Yeah, they're like there's stories that we're hearing, and like, listen, not every person who has a habit that is self-destructive is homeless and doesn't know how to shower.
No, right. No, but my point was that was
if that's the aspiration, we're in trouble.
Right. And they were sitting, and I guess what we're also getting at is perhaps there are amazing people who share their program in a way that is super applicable. We've also found that it's kind of haphazard. There's no real direction other than, oh, here's the big book, go through the steps, which in and of themselves are powerful when you have the right guidance, and all roads lead to Rome when you do it, but people get it. The book was supposed to be done, right? Like a week.
I don't know if this is true. Correct me if I'm wrong and come at me in the comments. That's fine. But
these are just opinions.
Although based in science and facts, that's fine. So no, it is an opinion. So I watched this movie about psilocybin and ayahuasca, and I can't remember what it was called. It was a documentary. And in the documentary claims that Bill, the founder of AA, came up with it during an ayahuasca trip, that he was doing a journey and he came up with his spiritual principles. He came up with the 12 steps. He invented them when he was under the influence of an ayahuasca trip. and brought them back and was like meant for people to like complete this program in like a 2-week period.
Yeah,
Right.
and then it's just it's they're golden rules. They're like the 10 commandments. They're 12 steps. Like you just live them. It's not. They're all every successful person
lives their life
by those principles. It's
by
we're not
principles.
knocking the principles, by the way. Like the principles are sound.
We have principles too, and one of the principles is you create your own reality.
Yeah,
you create your own reality is one of the basic principles that we are going to teach. So if you're in a reality right now with addiction and dysfunction, there's a piece of you that is attached to that, that is inadvertently stirring the pot, making it bigger and brighter, bringing more of that chaos into your life. And what we're saying to you is there is an absolute, straightforward, easy, amazing path forward and out.
simple,
Not easy. Because you got to walk. It's just like becoming a warrior. If you're becoming that's why we call it family empowerment warrior. The concepts are simple, but you have to be willing to be a Padawan and retrain your brain, retrain the way you're thinking, retrain your patterns. We are not about staying in a victim mentality. We are going to be victorious over this. We are overcomers. Victory is near. These are the things, this is the attitude that we want to have around it. Now, if you're suffering with addiction on your end and you're curious, come to, or if you're on the fence, you're like a problem drinker, you're binging,
or your
food addiction, or your pornography, or your gambling,
or your loved one is, and you want to learn more about how
loved
to understand what is happening and how to be an effective resource for yourself, by the way.
If you know these things, then you can hold other people accountable. Listen, once you master these principles of all these decades of study that we have combined, at least 50 years in personal development, steeped in great wisdom, ancient masters, the Tao Te Ching, the Bible, we've studied not just that.
It's not just a study, we have applied it.
Psychology, Jungian psychology, we've applied it to our lives. So
helped others apply.
And once you know this information, it's like when our 10-year-old comes to me and she says, last night she's having a lot of anxiety and she's like, I just when I think this thought, mommy, I get super sad. And I've been so sad lately. I've been thinking this thought and, okay, well, tell me about the thought. And well, let's change the thought. Let's play with the thought. Let's make it far. Let's do all the things that we know how to do to interrupt that pattern so that you don't wire that pattern to become an anxious person, because now you know how to do anxiety. We do addiction. We do anxiety. We do depression. Yes, there is an organic component. I have major depressive disorder. I have anxiety. I understand all those things, but I know how to manage them.
It's a difference of saying I am different saying I am depressed versus I'm experiencing depression.
Do you see how excited we get? It's like you have this tool that could change the world, right? If people would just apply this psychology to their bad habits, that life would never be the same again, that everything would change. Like this is the one area that we need to get control most and really focus in. But so many people are like busy chasing other things, right?
Well, and
Instagram likes and
which are more
optics, and that's addictive too.
Yes, that's more. Those are more addictive. It's coping mechanisms, strategies to avoid doing some of the things that we know would take us to the next level. By the way, the only thing that's really stopping us from getting those next results is the pattern that we've been running to avoid getting the results.
That's right. And by the way, it was not easy for me. I came from generational mentalities of poverty and addiction. I had an uncle die from addiction, another uncle die from addiction, another uncle die from addiction, an aunt die from addiction. My dad died from addiction. My whole family has been riddled with addiction, disease, and dysfunction for my entire life. Part of the reason I decided to create with my husband the Family Empowerment Warriors. There's nothing more important in life than who you do life with. There is nothing, not a more important decision you will make in your life than who you do life with and what standards they hold you to of greatness that's inside of you, the belief they have in their hearts about themselves and about you. And it took me a long time because I didn't have these secrets at first. I had to go thumbing through thousands of books and research and figure things out and try to study. And I was a seeker. I was like, there's got to be an answer here. These other answers don't work. And if it can work for a girl like me, who came from a poor, welfare, addicted, stricken family dynamic, generations of poverty and addiction, then I know if I can make that switch in my consciousness, you can too. I know you can. But we have a shortcut because we've taken all the tools and applied them to this one area, self-destructive habits.
Which, yeah, is not limited to substances.
I got so excited. I'm
Right,
sorry. I kind of
well,
went off on a tangent. No, because I get so passionate
well,
about it. I'm like,
and what we
we
were
have the
saying
solution.
is that if you are running a program right now, or you have a loved one running the program, and they're still not fulfilled, there's still something missing, this is the opportunity to get that. And very often it's a small shift.
Yeah.
It's that like it's right there, but it's being blocked by just a piece of paper. And if you're not having the level of fulfillment that you thought, that sobriety or free from those destructive patterns, or if your loved one is not feeling, you're not seeing fulfillment, this is a great opportunity for you to learn some of these other distinctions. We've got a whole list of them. We're just talking about a couple and few now.
Literally, we're,
Yeah.
oh, you can't see. Yeah.
So we encourage you, familymempowermentwarrior.com, learn about it. Come join us for
Come
3
through. 3
days.
days. We'll get to know each other really well.
We promise that you will get what you came for and more. You're going to be surprised what it is that actually is going on, because
It'd be
it's,
great to leave. I mean, I think one of the best things that I feel when families leave the weekend is the feeling that they have at the end of it, which is total empowerment. And that's why we call
yeah,
it Family Empowerment Warrior Weekend, because you leave empowered, not deflated, not defeated, but equipped and empowered with the tools and resources you need to change the life of yourself or your family, or restore your family, the peace and the sanity, because at the end of the day, the quality of your life.
it's the quality of your relationships.
That's correct. All right. We love you so much. Go to familymempowermentwarrior.com. Hopefully this has been helpful. And if it has, subscribe, like the video, share the video with somebody you know can benefit from it. And if you want to hear more, or if there's a specific topic that you're requesting or thinking about, and you want to hear more about, leave it in the comments and we will make a video especially for you, answering those really important questions that you have. Or come to the Family Empowerment Warrior Weekend and we will answer those questions in person.
Because that's probably going to inspire another question after that. Because there's always the, well, yeah, and what about this?
That's true. All right. We love you so much. Take excellent care of yourself. And until the next time, bye bye.
God bless.